We're going to talk about the anti-globalization movement and has divided our work in a few parts that we found most important for you to learn. First of all, Sofia will begin with explaining to you how the movement started and what the movement really is about. Then I will bring up what influences there are, mostly important people. Sofia will also talk about WTO, which is an organization that claims to be a forum for trade negotiations. And this is, of course, not what the anti-globalization movement believes. We're also going to tell you how the society has been affected since the beginning of AGM.
So I'm going to start off by just explaining what the anti-globalization movement really is. And we can start by just reading the name of the PowerPoint and the anti-globalization movement. And a lot of people get negative thoughts by just reading the name, just because, and a lot of people also that actually knows what this movement is about also think the name is kind of misleading. And this is because, like when you actually read this name, you think of a movement that is against globalization. And most people, I believe that most of you, actually see the movement, the globalization as something positive, something good, something that makes us on the earth come a little closer, or it's just generally something people like. It's like an international interaction where people can share products, ideas, and different culture aspects. And just like on this pretty little picture up there. But what you have to know is that the anti-globalization movement is not really against that picture up there or the globalization. The picture above actually kind of describes what the movement really has as a goal, and the picture below describes more of what the globalization, the movement is against. And right now it might be hard to see the difference between these pictures, but I will explain more in detail what I mean. But to continue with the names, now that you know that this movement not really is against the globalization, now that you know actually that the name is quite misleading. There are the movement actually has a lot of different names. The movement is referred to the global justice movement, alter globalization movement, anti-globalist movement, anti-corporate globalization movement, movement against neoliberal globalization. And this is of course also very confusing, just because these are all names for one movement and the same movement. And to continue with when the movement actually began, it was born in the early 90s, but for the general public, it seemed like they suddenly appeared during a protest in Seattle, 1999, and it got so much attention in media, like for example New York Times, and this is because there were a lot of people, around 50,000 people, during this protest, protesting for what the anti-globalization movement stands for. And for you to actually understand what this movement really is about, you kind of have to know more about another organization called the World Trade Organization, also called WTO. And yeah, we'll talk about that now. So, what is the World Trade Organization? As Adam mentioned in the beginning, it is an organization that claims to be a forum for trade and forum for trade negotiation. And the organization was born in 1995 at the end of the Uruguay round of international trade talks, replacing GATT, another organization standing for General Agreement of Tariff Trade and Trade. And what's the purpose purpose of this organization? Well, the purpose was to open up markets across the world in the name of free trade, and also to decide the punishment of any country which does not abide by its rules. It claims to be a democratic organization based on the principle one member, one vote. Yet the World Trade Organization has never held a vote. Instead, it allows the world's most powerful trading blocs, especially the European Union and the USA, to pull equal countries into submission behind closed doors. The weakest are threatened with losing aid and trading opportunities if they don't sign up to the World Trade Agreements. And so, whose interest does this organization really serve? The organization makes no secret fact of that it acts primarily in the interest of the big business and therefore big international companies. And that explains the picture I showed you before. Many of the key agreements was actually written by corporate lobbies first and then accepted by governments later. The organization is basically run by richer and more powerful countries, claiming to control a mix of liberal rights and protections for a country in the globalized world. Unfairly enough, they ensure that the already rich countries and big companies receive the great benefits. So what the World Trade Organization does is obviously absurd, but the resistance exists, and this is what the anti-globalization movement really fights against. One of the goals is to reduce the gap between developed and developing countries economically, and one of the goals is another goal is to maybe think more about the environment, since given that those in power do not care about the environment or people in the developing countries. Okay, back to Adam.
Yeah. The Canadian author and social activist Naomi Klein is known for her political analysis and criticism of corporate globalization. Her book, No Logo, became a bestseller and focuses on branding and how it affects people. The 4-section book dedicates 3 out of 4 sections to the negative effects of branding and brand-oriented corporate activity. While the 4th brings various methods some people have taken to strike back. No Logo in particular has made a great impact on the anti-globalization movement. Klein's work has brought her much positive fame, but also given her criticism. A book named The Rebel Cell stated that it was superficial to turn the improving quality of the life and working class into a fundamentally anti-market ideology. Antonio Negri is an Italian Marxist, sociologist, and political philosopher, best known for his co-authorship of Empire and work on Spinoza. He has been in various movies and done much work for this organization that has given, of course, effects. Though he has been accused of doing many bad things, including being the mastermind of the left-wing terrorist group, the charges was dropped, but he was sentenced for being involved in 2 murders. These 2 people has been an inspiration for the anti-globalization movement, and has indirectly made it what it is today, with, of course, many other activists. Due to that this movement has not existed that long, the impact has not been over many years. I think you can switch. Yeah. The impact hasn't been over many years, but still the anti-globalization movement has made an impact on society. First of all, the globalization has been a huge discussion over many years. So of course there will be a backlash. In society today, people are more spread with their opinions than ever. We have accepted the fact that people have different views and put everything into different perspectives. Skeptics say that states should be able to exclude other countries' culture without effect on the market. Today, that's highly difficult. I mean, how many countries doesn't have McDonald's, for example? So what this movement does exactly is to protest against, for example, the overconsumption and want it to stop. This extreme reaction to globalization has made the world a place for both sides. Most people in the beginning of the globalization were actually for it. But in the same way as people form opinions about most things, people started to doubt the globalization and see what the big negative concept it really is. Of course it had positive effects, but also negatives. The movement is still trying to set a more equitable world that is fair for both humans and nature. With this being said, the anti-globalization movement has achieved a great goal. The goal of spreading their opinions and what they stand for globally. So, own opinions then. Do you have Yeah. I personally believe that this world is big and strong enough for both of us, both humans and nature, to live in. I believe that humans can live in peace with nature if we stand together, united. If we all look at ourselves and those around us and see us as one.
We hope we've been able to inform you about what the World Trade what the anti-globalization movement really stands for, and that you're able to make your own conclusions. Something else incredibly important to keep in mind when fighting for movements like this are the consequences. For example, large companies sometimes get criticism if they exploit people in poor countries with low wages. The companies may change collaboration for a better reputation so that people will buy their products again. But this leads to the already poor individuals to become unemployed. Their salaries may be crucial, so you should put demands on what is okay. And those who are doing well, like us, should keep much better track. And also have demands on organizations like World Trade Organization, which actually claims to represent more than 140 countries.
Finally, some tips. Try to be aware of and influence what can lead to a brighter future. For example, such as buying fair trade products. Thank you.
You are on the air.
One day in May last year, two young women met on the sidewalk outside an abortion clinic. One of the women, Joelle, was 16 weeks pregnant, already showing. She was there for an abortion. The other woman, Carol, was serving her first day as a pro-life sidewalk counselor. She was there to talk Joelle out of getting that abortion, but she couldn't, even after Joelle learned about the risks of abortion and how a woman had died at this same abortion clinic. Finally, Carol told Joelle, if you're going to go through with this, at least let me give you a hand. Joelle agreed. Carol embraced her, and Joelle immediately broke down sobbing. She changed her mind about the abortion, and Carol accompanied her to a nearby pregnancy resource center for help. Joelle's daughter, Cecilia, was born in November, saved by a hug. This is just one of hundreds of times when the pro-life movement has saved a baby. The members of the pro-life movement spend a lot of time acting as counselors outside abortion clinics, trying to get their message through to the women before they go through with something that they would call a huge mistake.
There are
many different pro-life organizations in the world, with often the same message. In the late 1960s, groups started to mobilize opinion against the legalization of abortion. The eldest organization is National Right to Life, which was founded in 1968. All these organizations are standing on a conservative and often religious ground. There are both social and political movements. They argue that human life begins at conception, and their mission is to protect unborn life, because they can speak for themselves. All human life should begin with fertilization and end with a natural death, according to them. That is why they think abortion is wrong. In their opinion, that would be the same thing as murdering another person. In Sweden, there is a similar organization called Ja till livet, but that one is not as extreme as the other ones in the US. There are different opinions in the pro-life movement, depending on their background. Some of them are claiming that some types of birth control is wrong, while others are just pushing their main argument about how killing embryos are wrong. Most of the organizations started after the decision in the Supreme Court 1973, but it is hard to say when the resistance against abortion began. Unlike many of the other movements we have heard about here, this one is still an active one.
Reasons why the movement started in the first place was after the Supreme Court in 1973 decision in the case Roe v. Wade, which established that abortion is a part of the constitutionally protected right to privacy, which basically made it possible for women to perform abortion legally. And when this law was made, the pro-life movement established, although anti-abortion views have existed throughout U.S. history, especially in the Catholic Church long before this event. The movement seeks to reverse the Roe v. Wade case and promote changes that prohibits or at least restricts abortion. In the current situation, it's possible for most American women to do abortion. In some states, particularly in the South, however, a majority are forbidden to do abortion. These states have in many cases after Roe v. Wade instituted laws that seek to restrict abortion rights. And this includes laws requiring parental permission for minors who want to do abortion, and laws requiring the husband's permission, and laws requiring that abortion be placed in hospitals and not clinics and men anymore. They're doing all they can to stop the killing. United States pro-life movement is both a social and a political movement. And advocates generally argue that human life begins at conception, as Cecilia said, and that human fetus, and in most cases that human embryo is a person and therefore has the right to life.
Development and highlights. Today, the pro-life has increased with more members than before. Since the 1960s, the pro-lifers has divided themselves into different groups, so the movement is now scattered around the world. The organizations get more attention since they are aligned with the Republican Party in the US. And in the US, abortions are allowed while it is not accepted by society. Many Americans are still religious, which makes many of them opponents against abortion. Even today, abortion isn't accepted by society in some countries, which shows that the pro-life organizations are doing their job right to keep slowing down the development of free abortion. You can't really say that abortion pro-life organizations are trying to develop something, since they are trying to do the opposite by stopping all abortions. The development of the topic abortions would rather be that every woman in the world would be allowed to decide over her own body.
They often bring up political, medical, social, and religious arguments. Pro-life promotion involves different kinds of activities, from performing the pro-life position to the public in general, lobbying public officials, and attempting to persuade individual women to not to do abortion. And there's something called the life chain, which is a public demonstration technique where that involves standing in a row on a sidewalks, holding signs with pro-life messages. Messages include abortion kills children, abortion stops a beating heart, or abortion hurts women. And participants as an official policy do not yell or chant slogans and don't block pedestrians or roadways. And a rescue operation involves pro-life activists blocking the entrance to abortion clinics in order to prevent anyone from entering. And the stated goal of this practice is to force the clinic to shut down for the day. Often the protesters are removed by law enforcement, but some clinics were protested so heavily in this way that they closed down permanently. In performing a truth display, protesters publicly displayed highly magnified pictures of aborted fetuses, and some pro-life groups believe that publishing the graphic results of abortion is an effective way of making their case.
Abortion is always a common topic in the American politics. During the election years, the question concerning the right to abortion is always brought up. The two biggest parties have different opinions about this. The more conservative party, the Republicans, are against abortion in most cases, while the Democrats are for all kinds of abortion. This often results in political debates with religious aspects included. In the media, the pro-life organizations use a pretty radical propaganda to spread their word. Abortion is in some cases compared to different human disasters, like the Holocaust. Absurd facts regarding abortions are often brought up to make their stand. With powerful images, like Amanda said, they try to give you an upsetting message, and they try to impact our moral side to change our minds. Pro-life organizations are often described as deeply religious, since they claim that babies are created by God, and therefore you can't end a broken life. The newest thing regarding pro-lifers is that they now use blogs and the internet to write information about abortions. That is the fastest way they can spread their propaganda. They also have support for pregnant women, so they can make an impact on them and persuade them to continue their pregnancies. And every year there is a march, there is a demonstration called March for Life, which is held in Washington, D.C. This takes place on the anniversary of the United States Supreme Court legalizing abortion. Even though there are a lot of people involved in this demonstration, it always receives very little attention in the media. And we're now going to watch a clip from a movie called You Know, and that one is pretty relevant to the pro-life organization.
If you want sound, you need the black cord. And just not that one, the other one with yes, and then on the other side you have the plug, yeah. The socket. Yeah.
Your baby probably has a beating heart, you know. It can feel pain. And it has fingernails. Fingernails? Really?
Yeah, pro-life is not that common in our popular culture, but there are some movies that want to give the message of that abortion is wrong. In almost every American movie where an unplanned pregnancy takes place, the mother often decides to keep the baby, and abortion is not always an option. So in this movie, the synopsis is that a girl gets pregnant and she decides to get an abortion, but on her way to the abortion clinic, she meets a girl who seems to be like a pro-life demonstrant, and she changes her mind and keeps the baby instead, because of what that girl just said. So. People often associate the pro-life movement with something negative, even though they are standing for something good, unborn life. You can see the members of the movement in two different lights. You can either see them as people persuading and taking advantage of a vulnerable time in a woman's life by persuading her to changing her mind, when perhaps abortion actually would have been the best options for both the mother and the child. Or you can see them in a positive light, seeing them as saviors who make people rethink a perhaps rash decision, by making them see that there are other options than abortion, and that there are help and support to get from outside your family. No matter how you see it, they have and have had an impact on society for quite some while now, which indicates that they are doing something right, especially when it comes to women and children. Countless babies have been saved because of the pro-life supporters, and women has received help within the women health care centers that the movement started as well. Other accomplishments have been that hundreds of abortion clinics have been shut down. They managed to keep the issue and their movement on the front page of newspapers for quite some while. The majority of doctors in the USA are against abortion, and youngsters have shown increasing interest in pro-life movements. We weren't able to find important people for this movement. It seems that it has been the movement as a whole who made it strong.
And a little bit of a summary of what you have said is that the pro-life movement is still going on. They argue that human life should start with the fertilization and end with a natural death. According to them, abortion is wrong, and their main task is to protect unborn life and keep slowing down the development of abortion. The most clear consequence of this is that in countries where abortion is illegal, some women make illegal abortions instead, which is a very dangerous procedure. And abortion will always be about moral dilemmas, and as long as there is religion, there will be different opinions about if it's right or wrong. There are spread organizations in the world that are connected to pro-life in some way, but many of the organizations have different opinions and goals.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Thank you.